Yeah. Yes, please. Please. Thank you, Alex. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We had a presentation on Monday regarding branding and how to tell your story so it's delivered in a visceral and for a visceral experience. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to work with your brand and address challenges that may have risen, or if you have questions regarding how you can better communicate your brand. That's what this workshop is about. And we fully understand that there's elements of branding that's pretty intimate, right? There's personal stories involved. There's business secrets often shared. So when the workshop begins, the live stream will end and we'll have that personal interaction, that intimate interaction. So you don't have to worry and you can be yourself and we can talk about just about anything, right? Challenges, successes, failures, with no worries as far as is someone else going to hear what I have to share, okay? Before we begin the workshop, I just wanted to readdress or revisit our process when it comes to telling a story and building a brand. And what we did on Mondays, we talked about how we are rebranding and we're going to use us as a case study. And we talked a little bit about the challenges that came with that, the successes we've hit regarding our rebrand, the discoveries we've made during our exploration, what a discovery process sounds like and looks like, what the aesthetic ended up becoming, who was a part of building that brand, and how we want to tell that story, right? And part of understanding how we want to tell our story had to do with defining our voice, finding it, understanding it, realizing what it sounds like in copy or text, right? We wanted to make sure that the words we're writing also reflect how we want to speak with you and how we want to speak to an audience, and more importantly, how the audience receives that message. One of the things that Alex and I talk about quite frequently is when we talk about voice and cadence and tone, we're also responsible as branders, as business owners, as copywriters, as people who have a service or identity to communicate, is that copy, that communication is also responsible for controlling our audience's breath, right? It's that comma may not be grammatically correct, but it's cadence accurate. So what do I mean by cadence accurate, right? The master of language, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to controlling the reader's breath or the heartbeat of an audience, is Rumi. Okay, so he's a poet and he's a spoken, there's a lot of spoken word and poetry, but more than anything, he's a storyteller. And the way he tells those stories is through cadence. It's through a break. It's through a breath. And when you read Rumi, it's not always grammatically accurate, right? As far as traditional comma here, semicolon. I don't even know where a semicolon goes. I don't know how that works, right? But I've learned to write in a cadence that the copywriters want to rip my head off. And then I have to explain, this is why there's a comma here. This is why I added a dash. This is why I took away the first half of that sentence, is because I didn't want to sound repetitive, right? This is why Alex and I communicate the way we do with one another, is because we've been in branding and storytelling for so long that it drives our friends crazy. There's just talk like a normal human, just spit it out kind of thing. And we often get lost in our cadence, right? The best storytellers of today can be found in music, right? The best visual storytellers are the producers that you don't always count on being the best visual artists, right? I have a favorite. My favorite is Wes Anderson. I like him because everything is expected. There's no unexpected in his aesthetic, in his delivery, in his color codes, in his patterns, right? You might have a favorite singer, rapper, poet, spoken word artist. These are all cadence masters, right? Masters of language. It doesn't matter if they're using a vernacular you're not familiar with. It doesn't matter if they're using language that you don't approve of. They're speaking to a specific audience in a way that's received the way they hope for it to be received, right? So we talked a little bit on Monday about how marketing controls traffic to your brand, right? That's what marketing is. We're going to pay a lot of money to drive traffic to our product, our service, our website, our identity, our social media platform, our event. We're driving traffic towards something specific, okay? Branding makes sure that that something specific is in order, right? So we're not spending $10,000 driving eyes or ears to something that doesn't reflect you, that doesn't represent you well, right? So as an example, one of our bigger arguments with a client, it was more of a debate, and it's one of our best clients to date, was we're not ready to spend on marketing yet. Because what we'd be doing is driving traffic to a broken brand, right? And it's a really tough conversation to have, to tell somebody who spent thousands and thousands of dollars with who they trusted to build them a brand. And then you come in and you say, listen, this looks like it's been written by different voices, right? Your website copy looks like it's written by different people. One speaks this way, one speaks another way. If we want to be brand consistent, we have to do an audit, right? We have to do a language audit. They hadn't heard of that, right? It's an expense that's unexpected. And when we have those types of conversations, it's not always received very well. But when we show them the ROI in branding isn't, thank you for branding us on Monday. What can we expect on Tuesday? It's not that type of relationship. We brand on Monday, and then a year from today, we see its growth. We see how it's changed its market. We see how it's changed their culture, right? It could be their employees, or it could be them. How am I carrying myself today, right? Thanks to these lessons I've kind of learned in identity, in my tone, in my voice, in my posture, in my gait, in the voices I use or that I've chosen to use on this specific platform. Maybe I'm telling my story visually on Instagram, and maybe I'm telling my story in copy on my blog page, right? In a journal. So those have to be different voices. These are different ways of telling the same story, but you have different eyes looking at them, right? So, for example, if you were to tell a story on Snapchat, you're speaking to a different audience. It's a different demographic that might be just as interested, but they need to be spoken with in that tone that they're familiar with, right? We have to take that into account. One of the things I failed to mention on Monday was as we're building messaging today, right? In 2022, post-pandemic, a lot of websites haven't updated their language or their cadence or their messaging. Why is that necessary, right? We have to take in, as branders, and account for and be responsible for the fact that we're speaking to an audience. It's called a JACK audience, a mass audience, regardless who's visiting our website, whether it's someone targeted or someone we've never met. We're speaking to an audience with PTSD, okay? We've overcome something. Some of us, most of us, have overcome trauma during those past 2 years, right? So pushing a service or a product down their throat is tone deaf, because many of them have lost their job, right? Many of them have lost their income. Many of them have lost a family member. Many of them have a lot more important things to do than buy lip gloss, right? So pushing that down their throat is tone deaf. But if you position that lip gloss in a way that comforts, that understands, that rewards their courage, right? That rewards overcoming these specific difficulties, right? And you change that messaging on your website around, now you have an audience that's curated, that's listening, because you're empathetic, you're kind, you're a decent human being running a brand versus this digital, lifeless .com, right? When someone visits your website or a platform on which your brand lives, which might be Instagram, it might be a social media platform, they want to feel comfortable knowing that there's a human being behind all this, an imperfect human being that has many of the same traumas I share, that has many of the same teammates and love for their family that I share, that has many of the difficulties and successes that I want to aspire to or overcome. That sense of familiarity allows you to kind of build that brand love, right? That brand loyalty. You know, I'll tell you just a quick story, and I promise this will be the only personal story tonight, because on Monday it was like 20 of them. So I'm partial to wearing things I wore when I was 6 years. Like I still wear rugby's jeans and clogs, right? I just started wearing socks. So I didn't wear socks for like 24 years. I just don't like socks. I just don't like them. I just don't like socks, right? But I started wearing them again because of like the doctor said it has to do with my posture and all that stuff. Anyway, this long story short is I used to be made fun of. Like, why do you always wear this specific brand of rugby? And it's because I became brand loyal when I was very little. It was this specific brand of rugby that my mom could afford for me as something special, right? So it doesn't fit me very well. It doesn't fit me better than the other clothes. It doesn't fit me better than a $7 shirt. But I found reward in this brand. So now that when I receive it, it reminds me of that experience that my mom worked really hard to bring me something from this brand that I admired, right? That sense of brand loyalty and that memory and that story, that builds your brand audience and curates yourself, like, regardless of what you sell. You know, maybe the brand you're selling is you. Maybe the brand you're selling is a beauty product. Maybe the brand you're selling is food. Food is a story, right? It comes from culture. It's anchored, and it reminds you of your mom or your dad or your grandmother, right? It doesn't matter if I go to a restaurant, or Alex and I just had this experience, you know, and we went to a restaurant, and it was a Middle Eastern restaurant. And a lot of my family, you know, I'm Middle Eastern. I'm Persian, but I have no understanding of the culture because we left in 78, right, during the revolution. So I was raised in Rome, in Germany, in London, in Paris, and I just bounced around until we could come to the States. So I didn't really have an affiliation with my own culture. So we went to this restaurant. I was really excited to introduce some of my friends to some of my mom's style cooking, and it just wasn't, right? Because you have this memory of, this doesn't taste like mom's food, right? It doesn't tell that same story. This tea doesn't have rose water in it. What's up with that, right? And then the hostess looks at you and is like, our tea doesn't have, like, tea isn't supposed to have rose water in it. And I came to recognize it was just one of those things my mom did to give me a different experience, right? I was raised very poor, but I never felt poor. I was raised without money in a pretty gnarly neighborhood in East London, but I never needed anything. Yeah? It's those memories, it's that story that helped me become a better storyteller, or at least a student of it. So I could admire music, regardless of what genre it's from. Yeah? And it helps us become decent human beings. And it doesn't see color or race or identity or any of those things that are divisive now, right? Because you're telling a story, I'm telling a story, you're dealing with something, I'm dealing with something, and the way that all ties in your brand is through whatever platform you're driving traffic to. And you, as the head of that brand or the person in charge of how that brand communicates, needs to understand what story you're telling Is that the service, the product, the identity, the music, the song, right? The message, maybe it's an affirmation, is received. And it's received by the audience you've curated. So a lot of this is going to come across as common sense, right? My mom taught me this. My brothers and my sisters, they've raised me to be a decent human being. But for some reason, when we enter that business threshold, a lot of our human decency and those lessons we've learned coming up and growing up are ignored for this is business, right? It's not personal, it's business. This is business, how business people work. And you got to separate personal from business. And that's understandable, right? It's understandable. My agency, the company that we're building with my team, we prefer to share that personal side of business and to celebrate it and to make absolutely certain that that story is told, right? Out of respect to us. Out of respect to our voice, to our team matters, our story matters, our upbringing matters. It's personal. And regardless if someone says, listen, man, I'm a businessman. You got to have thick skin. If you're a business owner and you get some really bad news, or someone calls you something that you've worked your entire life not to be, something that questions your character, hurts a lot more than somebody questioning your product, right? And for some reason, they tend to do that a lot, right? It becomes personal for me at that stage. So I have to reflect, and I have to make sure I remain composed. And I want to make sure that the brands we help build are composed, right? Can I turn around and smack them in the mouth? Yeah, I guess I could. But that's not what we want to do as responsible, composed, professional brands, right? We're not kids anymore. We get called names from anybody. Anyone can call us names, right? Because we exist on the internet and we never have to face them or anything like that. So we receive good news the same way we receive bad news, okay? On the same platform, whether it's digital or in person, and our reaction has to be the same. And we want to make sure that the brands we build have those pillars, and they're so strong, and they're so heavy, and they're in cement, and just dialed into your foundation that you're unshakable, that you believe in your brand so much that you're willing to share it online, that you're willing to share it in a handshake, that you're willing to have a website up when you're not awake to serve as your handshake, as your representative, right? Because your website's going to be up when you're not. So you can't defend it if someone has something bad to say. Your product is going to be used without you standing next to the person or persons using it. Your service is going to be admired or discounted or talked badly about, but you're not there to defend it. And you need to be in a place within your brand that says it's okay. It's okay. I'm happy when you celebrate it, and I want to know why you didn't, if you want to share it with me, right? Because we're composed. We have that foundation on which we can continue to build, right? And we want to make sure we position ourselves as imperfect, because perfect is really expensive to maintain, really expensive, right? But imperfect is incredibly valuable. It's incredibly profitable, right? Double down on not being perfect. Except we position that as we're doubling down as being human. We are a human-centric brand launched by a human being for human beings to enjoy, and we're using technology in a way as a tool to share that product, service, identity, music, food, right? It's an invitation to something bigger than us, right? It's an invitation for you to meet my team and not just see our portfolio of work, It's for you to kind of get to know them. Understand why I work with the people I work with, why I consider them friends, and why the model that I've built is the way it is. That's how I've chosen to position this brand, right? You may say, I don't have a team yet, but I have a story of how I got here. And it's not all roses, right? But I don't want to just talk about my failures. I want to make sure that my failures are a part of this story of success. Because you leaped, you jumped, and that's worth celebrating, you know? So when entrepreneurs in this space at the ETC or at MICA, where I teach, right? A summer course in MICA in branding. When they come to me and they talk about that leap, and they say, I'm really scared about this jump, and they're in their 20s, right? And I'm really scared about this leap, I'm really scared to jump. I often ask them, what are you jumping from? And they describe a cliff, right? Leaping off of a cliff is really scary, but what if? What if we're talking about a curb? What if it's the same leap? It's that same idea and faith. And believe you'll land on your feet. And if you don't, it's okay. It's okay, right? Because you're giving up something, but you gotta bet on yourself. You are worth that gamble. It's the worth, the value that's going to show up in your voice, your tone, and your cadence. So when we talk about branding, we're not just talking about your logo, right? We're not just talking about your colors. We're not just talking about your aesthetic. We're talking about dividing value and combining it with your values, right? Your untouchables, your non-negotiables. This is what I stand for. These are my pillars, right? We want to make sure we archetype your identity and design something for that specific archetype. Now, if you're not familiar with what brand archetypes are, there's a book on my homepage of our website, andrebean.com. You can download a free ebook of the book that we use quite often called The Hero and the Outlaw, right? And I have it here in case you guys want to take a picture of it or peruse it, you can. But The Hero and the Outlaw, it's not a book you read from page 1 to page 300. It's a resource for you, okay? It talks about the archetypes. Are you a hero? Are you an outlaw? Are you a caregiver? Are you Robin Hood? Are you something completely different? Are you a combination of a few archetypes, right? And if so, how do they speak? What are their values? Do I reflect these values, right? Do I stand up and do I champion the same values that the caregiver does, right? Is my motto similar? This book walks you through these archetypes in a language that's super familiar, right? You don't have to have a degree in literature to understand what an archetype sounds like given this book, right? So you might say, hey, I watch a lot of Star Wars movies. Will I still understand this book? And the cool thing is, yes, you will, because they even mirror, the outlaw to Darth Vader, right? Is Darth Vader a good guy or a bad guy? He's just an archetype, He's positioned as a bad guy if you're rooting for Skywalker, right? But if you're rooting for Vader, is he the bad guy or is he just an archetype, the outlaw? And what we talked about on Monday is the outlaw is not the criminal. The outlaw is an archetype, a personality, an identity that does things, or who does things in a non-traditional way to get to the same place you want to get to. Right? They're an outlaw. That's it. It's non-traditional. It's like non-conformist. That's all. When you understand archetypes, your understanding of each other blows up. It grows. You build this incredible warmth inside you, and you begin to recognize how other brands are speaking overnight. Overnight. as soon as you begin defining your archetype, you get to recognize other archetypes. And when you do that, you understand how they want to be spoken with, who wants to be spoken to. You know, how are they receiving the messages you're writing on behalf of your company, or how you're saying something to a partner, or how you're addressing an audience, or a stadium full of people. There are 12 different archetypes 1,000 times over. How do we address a jack market, right? Don't worry about the jack market. Worry about how does your archetype communicate. Now you can speak to everybody, right? Now you understand everyone. And those that you don't understand, you have this opportunity to ask, help me understand what you meant, in a way that doesn't sound belittling. It's curious, right? And we talked on Monday how interested equals interesting. And it triggers the oxytocin inside you. This person cares about me, about me, right? This person cares about this idea. This person cares about my movement. This person really cares about animals and what I believe in. This person cares about cruelty-free products, And given the landscape that's today, cruelty-free isn't something that's bypassed anymore, right? That extra 15 cents on the dollar matters because it's cruelty-free. Now we're paying extra to be a little bit more responsible. And that's okay. And when you understand your brand and your product and you stop pricing it for what you think others should be paying versus what it's worth, you're going to be in a much better place. I promise you that. And it was one of the hardest lessons I had to learn when I was pricing out my services, right? And I had a conversation with someone here before about, I was really afraid to bill my rate. Because what if they think, this guy's not tall, dark, and handsome. The head of this agency is. This guy wears rugbies and clogs. I was very self-conscious about my appearance. And does that really reflect my quality or the quality of my team? I was worried about that. And for a very long time, I had to go to Alex and say, listen, man, I'm going to wear this because I'm comfortable in this. Is that okay? I needed that affirmation, that permission to be me. Until he finally sat me down and he said, what the F are you talking about? It doesn't matter to us. We're going to pitch the same thing no matter who's standing in front of us. And they're going to hire us based on our qualifications. Now, granted, there's going to be opportunities where you get hired given, what specific people look like. Or for me, it's behavior, right? That's what matters to me. And I'd rather double down for like that. I'm going to be kind. I'm going to be honest. What you see is what you get. Some people like me and some people think I'm a complete dork. They're both right? The dorkness is real, right? So voice, tone, cadence, be authentic, be true to yourself. And we've all heard start with why. On Monday, I reminded you why is not an answer, it's a question, right? So if you're going to start with why, then start with asking yourself why. Why you? Why should it be you? Why should I pay money to you? Why you and not your competitor? Why did you start? Why is this important? Why does this need to exist? How is this going to make money? Okay? Regardless of how beautiful your story is, we want to make sure it's sustainable. It needs to be profitable. And you're not being a mean person for charging money. Okay? And that's another lesson I had to learn, even though it's just common sense, right? I had to allow myself to be in business before I allowed anyone else to hire me, right? And it doesn't matter if you're in it doesn't matter what industry you're in, you need to give yourself permission to succeed. And I just heard myself say it, and it's so corny. It's so corny, but it's so true. It's so true, right? You got to be comfortable telling your story, and you have to understand in order for me to do this full time, since I took the leap, since my mom is counting on me, yeah? and she believes in me. I don't want to let anyone down. I have a team depending on me now. I have to charge money. I would do this for free. I really would. Yeah? But it's not sustainable. Right? I can't continue to keep the company I keep, which are my friends, or surprise my mom, or make sure my sister's okay, or take care of hospital bills that aren't my own, right? Because you're the oldest son, and in some cultures, that's your responsibility, without charging, without paying myself, yeah? So without eating. One of my first clients, after I gave him the invoice, he added money to it. He was kind to me. And he sat me down and he said, this is worth much more. This is what you need to be billing, or I can't put you in front of my clients. Because there's a psychological element to pricing, right? A polo shirt that has the exact same thread count as one from Marshall's, that's the Marshall's brand, is $110 versus $26. Why do we pay that $110? Right? It's not just because I want to wear Polo or Brooks Brothers, yeah? It's because I identify with quality. The more money I spend, it's got to be a quality issue. That's how our mind perceives specific things, right? The steak served at Ruth's Chris is purchased at the same butcher as the mom and pop restaurant down the street. Okay? But we're paying for experience. That's what we're paying for. That's the value. What experience am I about to share with me? If I buy this polo, how is it going to make me feel? Let me ask you guys something just before we jump into the workshop. Do you know what Nike sells? Do you know what the point? You do? Okay. So a lot of audience members I've asked, they say shoes, right? Nike does not sell a shoe. It's never been a shoe company since it started, right? Nike sells the finish line. Nike sells that dream that you're an athlete, you're like an athlete. Nike sells the experience of professional athleticism. You deserve to wear Nike. You are part of this team, right? On Monday, we talked about why so many of us have jerseys belonging to our favorite team. They're not going to call you from the stands to come sub in, right? Keanu Reeves movies, 100%, right? But we wear those things because we identify with this team as being part of our ethos. They're part of our identity. It's who I root for, yeah? Growing up in the UK, I was not allowed to root for the East End, right? That's West Ham. So they're hooligans. So I was not allowed to be a part of that community. So I had to find another team to root for, right? Because that was their brand. Their brand was violence. I could not even own one of those jerseys without my mom getting pretty upset, right? But we still own those jerseys, and we still have those memory of sneaking into those stadiums. I snuck into, I think, every stadium, every game. I don't think I've ever bought a ticket. But, that's a different story. Oh, man, it's like my third personal story. So the point is we have to identify with your service, your product, your messaging, right? You want your audience to be a part of something. You're not just selling them something and saying, thanks for everything, bye. You want to give them something, which is that experience. So you want to experience that oxytocin rush again, right? Branding isn't design and art and strategy. It's all of those things plus chemistry, plus biology, plus psychology, plus an understanding of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? A master brand guide isn't 14 pages telling you how to use your logo. A master brand guide, the ones that we deliver, are 110 pages that talk about the chemistry of your brand, the tone, the cadence, how you're supposed to behave, right? And why you're supposed to behave that way. What's your archetype and how does that archetype behave? Because the founder's archetype is going to be woven into the brand's DNA. I can't expect Alex to shrink a foot, right, and wear clogs and like the things that I like, but I can expect Alex to reflect those standards that I believe in, that I want our audience to believe in and to double down on, right? Because we're not the cheapest agency, company, firm, freelancers, designers, whatever it may be, in the market. In our industry, when those individuals that, let's say a product costs $5, well, I'll come in, I'll do it for $1. That's called buying the contract. It's frowned upon, right? But it happens quite often. And the people that say yes to the $1 deal have to buy that $1 deal 15 times because it's never done well, right? Because that company's in business too. And they have to make that $1 profitable. So when we charge $5, we explain why. And we don't leave our client's side after the engagement is finished. One of the things that we're very proud of, and this is something you can incorporate into your model, is that we build relationships, we don't bill relationships, right? Our friendship with you and our engagement with you is not defined by a paycheck. It's defined with your success. Because if you are successful, we can high five and we can look cool. And we can feel good about something, which is what's driving us every day. We feel good about helping you do something you've wanted to do that you failed to do, maybe because you didn't have the right partners to do it with, but has never, ever had anything to do with you. I promise you that. Your job is to tell your story, right? If you don't have the tools to tell your story well, why would that be your fault? Okay? Make sure you have the right tools that you're comfortable working with, tools that you like working with, right? We may not be likable, so we're not very compatible for that client. But if that client says, you know what, Ogilvy is a lot more qualified, guys. They're also a lot more expensive. I want to give you a shot. That to us means everything. But if we're not likable, we don't get that shot, right? And the way we choose to be likable is by being honest, right? And sometimes that's accepted and received very well, and sometimes it's not, because we're human beings, right? And we can't expect everybody to take criticism. Thanks, man. Like, I'm really glad you told me I suck at this, or this was broken. But there are some clients that appreciate honest feedback. So the way that ties back into you is your brand honest? Is your archetype honest? Right? Is your messaging honest? Is it concise? Is it defined? Does it reflect what you do? Is it clear as far as like what you're selling, who you're selling to, and why you're doing it? Does it look the way you hope for it to look? Because these things all have solutions, right? And if something doesn't reflect your brand the way you want it reflected, whether it's in copy, in text, or in design, or in architecture, right? The way it's laid out and organized and shared, you can fix that. And it doesn't have to be paid, right? You don't have to hire Andre Bean to do everything. I'm going to show you how to do it. And if you have the time and the team to do so, I encourage you to do it because it's an awesome, awesome experience to achieve those things, okay? So I'll help you gain and sharpen those tools so you can continue to tell your story well, okay? So going back to this list, discovery, exploration, values, archetype, voice, tone, cadence, messaging, and then delivery. That's what we've kind of started with when it came to the links some of you sent us, right? We took a look at your websites. We read your copy. We understood where some of the challenges lied. We understood where improvements can be made. Some are aesthetic, some are strategic, some are an organizational thing, and some are pure identity, okay? So there's nothing that we looked at that can't be fixed. And there's nothing that we looked at that can't be fixed by you. I promise you, right? It's all about, do I want to do that? Okay? So I don't ever want you guys to think that our engagement with you is a sales pitch. I'm not in sales. I don't like sales. I'm very uncomfortable even talking about sales. But we're here for you, right? So if you want help with something, call me, text me. My personal phone number is going to be on my website and on my emails. Email me. You know, I'm okay with that. I still use the phone with a voice, like hello, versus texting it. I still do that. I'm analog, right? So when we go to meetings, I have a notebook and he has an iPad and digital. I have a notebook with a pen. Yeah? So I can relate to some of our clients that are just uncomfortable taking that digital leap and doing things themselves and preparing files themselves. And I can also relate to our clients that are ready to take that tech leap, that want to do more with tech, right? Because I have friends like Alex and teammates like Alex, because he knows what he's talking about and I don't even know how to hook up my cable, okay? So, did anyone here, just by hands, share their email or email me a link to their site? You did? Okay, excellent. Okay, good. Those are the sites we've already reviewed, and I have some feedback for everybody. Again, once we start doing the workshop, the live stream will be cut so that we can talk about just about anything. Okay, and whether it's an intimate issue or challenge with your brand, we can talk about that without the worry of someone we're not really counting on hearing us speak, right? Your privacy is protected. That's why our client portfolio is hidden, right? It's private. Is there anything I can answer? Do you have any questions that I can answer?
I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So you're talking a lot about branding yourself, and I've seen a lot of companies do that, and sometimes they talk so big, and they probably really believe that they're genuine or they're trying to do something great or whatever. And to me, like, they have all these big, nice words on there, and it's so vague. It almost seems like scope creep, and it seems ingenuine at that point, despite how genuine they might be feeling about their company.
Yeah.
How much they must believe in themselves. You know what I'm trying to get across?
I think so. So what I'm hearing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, okay, so I can make sure I answer your question, that some companies have doubled down on their values so much that it seems templated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, we care about you and we want this from you and that, and they probably really do, but it's just not targeted enough, and it's so widely applicable to any company that it seems fake.
So you're right. The ones that are vague or the ones that really don't follow up, I'll give you an example of what I suggest with my clients, okay? So if one of my clients has doubled down and on their website they say, we care about this, we care about that, we care about them, we care about this person, it's an identity, race, environment, political, whatever it may be, right? I either ask them to remove it or give me a proof of concept. What is your evidence? Show me something, right? It's not enough for me to say, I love my team, right? My proof of concept came from someone else validating that and putting it in print. So when a different company recognized my love for my team and they published it as Misfit Teamworkaholics, I was thrilled that they called us misfits, which I kind of like, right? But Teamworkaholics really resonated with me, right? So that was my validation. That was my proof of concept. The other proof of concept that we use is on our website, we make it clear under our website's under construction right now. We're rebranding, but once it's up, you'll see it. We don't accept any clients or projects that share a message of hate or division. We just won't take those jobs, right? To me, that's a no. You know, I like ramen, so I'm okay with that, right? I don't have to eat big. I live very small, yeah? So when a company that you're describing says, we do this and we do that, and they're vague about it, it doesn't add to their brand equity. Right? Equity is how much you value me, my brand, right? How much do you value me? That's equity in branding. Okay?
What are your suggestions then to like be a more authentic
You know what? If you communicate as a human being versus a business, it comes across like a conversation versus a pitch. That's my suggestion, right? If you just write as you, oh, thank you so much. If you write as you versus as a marketing specialist, it sounds better. It's in my language, right? So if you say, and you're honest about it, you say, this is a new company. I've yet to do X, Y, and Z, but I hope to do this with a proceed of our profits, or a part of our profits, right? I hope to accomplish this, because you're being honest about it. It's like, I hope that we are successful enough to share some of these profits with some of these organizations that we really love. We've come to love them. And they're small and they're local and they protect the LGBTQ community, right? It's like we want to give back to them, and that's our goal. You can define your goal versus this is who we are. And once you get there, celebrate it. That's my suggestion, right? Celebrate that goal once you get there versus saying, we donate to LGBTQ without having donated yet. Yeah?
Right.
Is that okay? Did I answer that?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm long-winded, so maybe I answered it like 10 minutes ago. I don't know.
No problem.
Is there any other question I can help? Sure.
Well, it's not so much a question. It's more of like an opinion about what she said,
Okay.
or maybe an answer.
Sure.
I believe, like, even in my brand, I'm like rebranding when it doesn't seem authentic. I think it's because the brand hasn't really committed to building a community around their brand. So that's one thing that, because I feel like building a community around your brand is like more intimate. So if the person chooses to, you know, join your community with your brand, it becomes more intimate and you get to know the founder more, maybe, you know, the brand more and their values and what they're really about. So I do think some brands lack the factor of building a community rather than just being a brand that you can go visit online or, you know, at a store.
Okay. So I know what you're saying. And the concept of brand community is vital. It's so important, right? Because there's brand citizenship that comes with that. There's brand loyalty that comes with that. And then most important of all, there's brand stewards that are born from those communities, okay? Representers of your brand. Like, I'm a steward of this brand, right? I think what we have to be careful with, though, is building a community that's not quite honest, right? That likes us for us and believes in us for us, but we're being dishonest, and now they're backing a liar, right? So if we were to fail or fake it till we make it kind of thing, we might do much worse with a community that hasn't really found validation or seen validation than start honest from the start. Like, I don't really believe in fake it till you make it. That's not what you're saying in a complete, yeah, I got you. You're saying build that community of honest stewards, right? Integrity.
Honest, like selling, like I'm a beauty,
Right.
but I'm not going to say like I'm a clean brand because I have stuff that's not clean and
Uh-huh.
I have products that are clean.
Yes.
And I'm going to be honest about that to my community. And you can choose what you purchase and what you don't, but as long as I'm being honest with you up front, I feel as though my integrity and I'm meeting you with honesty.
So you hit the nail on the head, right? You have that honest approach to value, right? There's going to be 5 companies, and you're the 6th company in every handful that's not, okay? And sometimes those dishonest companies spend millions of dollars coming up with communication strategies that capture the market you hope to capture. And I want you to know that's okay, right? Because if you want to say, I want to have 30% of the coffee business, that's what kind of brand I want to launch. I want 30%. If you have 1% of the coffee business, you're a billionaire. You're a billionaire, okay? So we have to make sure that you're comfortable being honest and growing from that, just like you described. That honest message builds you the community that validates on your behalf. So a year ago, we received validation through followers and likes, right? It's like, oh, this brand has 50,000 likes. They're nice, right? Or this post got 2 million likes. That's Kardashian, right? But that's not how we validate anymore, because our vendors, our market, and if you want to speak on this, we definitely can, our audiences have gotten smarter. We're no longer speaking to an uneducated, non-tech savvy market, right? They know what they're doing probably better than most of us do, right? The consumer knows their stuff, okay? I got it. So, honesty, in my opinion, fake it till you make it isn't really traditional. I think it's a fad. It's not sustainable, right? Honesty from the beginning will get you where you need to get to. It'll allow you to pivot. It'll allow you those honest inflection points. I used to be X and now I'm Y. And here's why. You get to change your mind when you're honest, right? Because now you don't sound like you lied in May and all of a sudden, you're vegan. I've always been against animal cruelty. We sold steaks out of whatever, right? It doesn't come across very well, okay? But if you're honest from the beginning and you send a message to your audience, for example, and you say something like, listen, we used to do this, and we're really proud of our heritage, but as we've grown, we've also grown this affinity for our environment, right? And we've come to recognize that this type of behavior or this type of diet or this type of farming can be harmful, and we don't want to be part of that, right? When I didn't eat meat for 8 years and I kept being asked where I get my protein from, no one asked me, by the way, when I didn't. When no one knew I didn't eat meat. But when I stopped eating meat and they said, why'd you stop eating meat? My only answer was just honest. I said, ingesting suffering didn't sit well with me at the time. I was getting sick, right? And my doctor first told me to cut out red meat, and then I cut out chicken on my own, and it became healthier for me, right? But as I grew, I never put a label on it. I never said I'm vegan, right? Because when I went home and my mom cooked something, or if I was a guest, I would never deny it. I would celebrate it and thank them and be grateful for that meal, right? So I never put a label on what I chose to do in my home. But whenever I was asked why I didn't eat meat, I was just honest about it. It was making me sick at the time, right? And I was playing rugby, so it was a big deal, right? Because I wasn't eating what everyone else was eating. So honest messaging allows you inflection points. Not just inflection points and pivots, but something that your audience can celebrate with you. We're changing, we're growing. We didn't just flip the script. Yeah? Is there anything else? Yes, please.
Thanks. I was pulling off of what you said earlier about the Nike situation.
Yeah.
Just basically people wearing that, it gives you a certain communication.
Yeah.
And also, when I first started my brand, I tried to pull on the issue that I'm gonna donate to the kids or inner city kids and help, reconstruct mindsets and stuff like that. So
Good.
It didn't get as much attention that I thought, because I thought that's what everybody would want to hear. So I went to, how can I now with the brand, and not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but my brand is called Dummy, and that's a lingo we use here in Baltimore a lot, within the youth. But it's DUMI, means don't underestimate my intelligence. So what I was thinking was, why do I have to wait till I generate the income from my brand to help the youth when I can just pinpoint what I'm doing with the diction of the word, you know what I mean? So I can give them, when they wear that, so Nike says well, this guy has on that, so he may be this type of athlete. Oh, I know, I can see how it fits on his pants. He must be fast or good at what he does. But when you have my brand on as a child, you can go up to your grandmother and say dummy, and she like, boy, don't say that, because I had older people not want to wear it because of what it entails, you know. But when you say what it means, now you're breaking a language barrier between young and old, and now you can meet on the same level, and they can look at their child when they say it and actually smile because they know what it represents. So I'm just like, instead of putting money into it, I can put a love and a silent communication between young and old, and just, you know, when you walk around like, they know what they hold within their mental. So I was just like, was that the right, you know, I just felt like that was probably like the right thing to do without being monetary.
What's your name?
JD.
JD?
Yes.
You hit the nail on the head. I'm so proud that you just said what you said. In the phase where your brand is right. Like, it's just you've learned that lesson very quickly. And it's a very expensive lesson to learn.
Yeah.
Right? And I'll tell you something I tell some of my students, what you donate, or that kindness that your brand shares from profits, that's more self-validation than community validation, okay?
Right.
The two biggest industries that donate are tobacco and pharmaceuticals, okay? Number 3 isn't even close to how much they donate. But they didn't receive that brand equity that we're seeking, right? It's just their way of having validation in legal circumstances, right? But they're the two biggest donators on the planet is pharmaceutical and tobacco, right? But if you say, I did this, I created this brand to support this, to further the efforts I'm already doing without making a dollar. This contributes, supports, and benefits X, right? Now you're going to do it, and that's going to attract partners that want to be a part of that story. Hey, can you put my name down, right? Can you put Andre Bean down as one of your partners? Because I want to be part of that inner city story, right? Because I think it's beautiful. I think what you're doing and tying it back to the word dummy and to the youth is really, please, JD.
And the fact that I changed my mindset and my perception on it allowed me to get into schools, and I taught an entrepreneur class where the student had to put dummy on their uniforms.
Hey,
so it's just like, just you know,
yeah.
And then I just got a college student. I did a collaboration with them and made their brand, which was loyalty, which stems off a dummy. Okay. You know what I mean? So like, just changing my whole mindset, it really opened up some things. So
I'm really proud of you. And I think it's such a great thing that you're doing. And I hope you continue it, right? And there's going to be times where you're not going to want to, right? And there's going to be times where there's pushback, like, why won't you let me help you? Right? I don't want any money. I just want to be a part of the story. Keep going. Yeah? And please email me and keep me updated, because I think it's really great. And I'm in Baltimore now, right? So reach out anytime. I'd love to help any way I can, okay? Yeah, but that mindset matters. Yeah? Is there any other? Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
How much? Okay.
Yeah, my name's Adiola. I'm the founder of Fem Equity. So Fem Equity is a digital platform that advances underrepresented individuals to close any pay inequity gaps within their careers, as well as accelerate their careers and gain some financial education and financial literacy. And so we've been in a lot of like prestigious programs as a organization. Hopkins, JP Morgan, Techstars. I will not bore you with all of them. So my question is like, kind of with that brand equity, kind of detaching away from that and just like, hey, we are a staple on our own because our product works, our platform works. And yes, we've been in these things, but our platform has been in addition to them versus kind of the way we've been doing it where they're in addition to us, because a lot of our members, when they are originally coming on the platform, they're mad, right? They're upset because they feel like they've been slighted, whether it's career, whether it's finances, and we elevate them to getting into that equity space, right? And so some of the prestigious programs that we've done, they have done some parts with, bringing these equity gaps within kind of our individual stakeholders that would be on a platform. So my question is kind of like, how do we kind of start leveraging our own voice instead of, in a way, being under the voice of these prestigious programs that we've done?
Okay, great question, right? You have your own identity. You don't want to be, a part of this institution or that institution. The first part is, one, you don't have to celebrate charity. That doesn't always have to be celebrated, right? Because you're doing something in literacy, financial. I've spoken with you before.
I know.
Okay, no, okay. I thought I recognized you. Okay, so financial literacy, especially for the under-resourced, right, is going to receive, it's like a magnet, right? And you're going to get a lot of attention from brands that want to share in your equity, but they receive most of the reward, okay? That's a PR thing, okay? The way you separate yourself is not by pushing those brands away. They are esteemed partners of your total efforts, right? But when you share your message, and you do want to call out those specific partners in a way that's honest, like you want to thank them without belittling you. Like, I could have made it here without them. Like, you already know it, right? But you don't want to say, I didn't really need these guys. The way we do it is you can say, we've come so far, and you're celebrating how much you've succeeded, and you want to thank those partners, right? This ego as part of the business owner, right? It's going to be there, right? It's always going to be there. And one of the things that we've recognized is allowing our client or our partners to take credit for one of our creative suggestions is okay. Like, it's okay. As long as they're happy, we don't have to take the credit for everything, okay? But as far as your identity goes and like your validation, that's where you can say we want to thank those partners for coming on board, right? There's language behind it that says you are the invitee, not them. You know what I mean? And we'll talk some more because you've grown a lot since the last time you and I spoke. Well done. I'm really proud of you.
Thank you.
All right. Do you have any other questions? Okay. So I think we got like a half hour to kind of walk through some of the sites we reviewed. But I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay here, so if you wanted to stay later, if we didn't get enough time, I'm not going anywhere. Okay? All right. Thank you very much.